Hey everyone, something major is happening in the global energy market right now, and I think it's worth a serious conversation, because what's unfolding could affect every single one of us in the months ahead. Here's the core of it. The Strait of Hormuz, the single most important choke point for global oil shipments, is essentially shut down. Tankers are being forced to reroute, shipping costs have skyrocketed, and this strait carries a massive share of the world's crude oil. When it goes offline, the ripple effects are global. No country is immune. But here is what's strange. If you look at oil futures, the price on your screen, things seem manageable. Brent crude futures are hovering around $100 a barrel. But if you are an actual buyer trying to get physical oil loaded onto a ship and delivered to a refinery, you are paying well north of $130, sometimes even more. The gap between what the futures market says and what the real world charges is about $35 per barrel. That's the widest spread on record. What does that tell us? It tells us that the numbers on the screen and the reality on the ground have completely diverged. Why? Interpretations vary. Some say this is deliberate sentiment management, keeping the headline number low to avoid panic. Others point out that every time a major announcement drops, a ceasefire rumor, a peace talk, there are massive short positions placed just minutes before, involving hundreds of millions of dollars. That pattern has shown up more than once. Whatever the explanation, the price that actually matters to regular people is the physical price, not the one on the ticker. Now, let's tackle a myth. A lot of people still believe that certain major oil-producing nations, take the United States, for example, energy independent. Sounds great, right? But the numbers tell a different story. The U.S. imports roughly 6.3 million barrels of crude per Dalton 1 and exports about 4.1 million. Simple math, that's a net import of 2.2 million barrels every single day. A country that still needs to buy over 2 million barrels a day from the global market is not disconnected from global supply chains, not even close. Globally, we consume about 100 million barrels of oil per Daltony. The current supply shortfall, caused by the shipping disruptions, is estimated at 8 to 13 million barrels per Daltony. To put that in perspective, the U.S. alone uses about 20 million barrels a day. So the global daily deficit is close to half of America's entire daily consumption. That's not a rounding error, that's a crisis. And the effects are already cascading around the world. Asia was hit first. The Philippines declared a state of emergency after fuel prices doubled overnight. Vietnam and Indonesia shifted large parts of their workforce to remote work. Thai fishing boats, facing fuel costs that tripled, are sitting idle in ports. Japan has slowed down its public transit systems. India suspended commercial LPG supplies to make sure families could still cook at home. Across Africa, fuel supplies are on the verge of collapse. Some countries have started blending other substances into gasoline just to keep things running. Australia tapped its national reserves and cut fuel taxes, but its last imported fuel shipment is expected to arrive on the 19th of April. Europe is rationing demand in every way it can, and according to J.P. Morgan, the United States, the last to feel the squeeze, will exhaust its price buffer around the 20th of April. But oil isn't the only thing to worry about. There's a deeper crisis brewing. Food, the world's most widely used fertilizer, is urea, and the key input for urea production is natural gas. When gas prices spike, fertilizer gets more expensive. When fertilizer gets more expensive, farming costs go up. And when farming costs go up, food prices follow, typically with a 6 to 12-month lag. That chain is clear, predictable, and very hard to break. The bond market is also sending some fascinating signals. Yields on government bonds in the US, UK, Germany, and Japan are all climbing, meaning borrowing costs are rising for these economies. But here is the anomaly. China's bond yields are falling. For the first time in 2 decades, China's 10-year government bond yield has dropped below those of all the countries I just mentioned. That suggests a structural shift in where global capital is seeking safety. However you interpret it, say it's worth paying close attention to. For countries carrying massive national debts, rising yields are a nightmare. When oil pushes inflation higher, central banks can't cut interest rates. That means government borrowing stays expensive, interest payments balloon, deficits widen, and you get a vicious cycle: high inflation, high rates, growing debt burden, worsening fiscal outlook. This isn't some abstract textbook scenario, it's playing out in real time. History gives us a pretty clear playbook for what happens next. During the 1973 Arab oil embargo, global supply dropped by just 7%. Oil prices surged 300%. The U.S. stock market lost more than half its value over the next 2 years, and inflation hit 12%. During the 1990 Gulf War, again about a 7% supply reduction, stocks fell over 20%. Now, the supply gap is 15 to 20%, more than double those historical precedents, and yet financial markets are acting as if nothing extraordinary is happening. There's one more dimension that rarely gets discussed: the military supply chain. Reports indicate that in just 5 weeks of conflict, certain nations burned through nearly their entire inventory of advanced cruise missiles, and the raw materials needed to rebuild that stockpile, rare earths, tungsten, are predominantly controlled by the very adversaries on the other side of the table. That kind of strategic asymmetry doesn't resolve quickly. It reshapes the global power balance for years to come. The reason I'm spending this much time breaking all of this down is simple. I believe there's a dangerous disconnect right now. Financial markets are saying everything's fine, but the physical world, rerouted tankers, surging fertilizer costs, countries declaring emergencies, is telling a very different story. And every time in history these two narratives have clashed, reality has won. Because you can create any number on a screen, but you cannot print a physical barrel of oil. No one knows exactly how this ends. Maybe there's a ceasefire tomorrow. Maybe this drags on for months. But regardless of the outcome, understanding what's actually happening and what it could mean is something we all owe ourselves. Alright, that's it for today. If you found this valuable, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.